thinking about overwhelm, which is the topic of the week. And I was also thinking about where it might sit on a bit of a scale. So this is not what we talked about on the podcast. It's just kind of some post podcast reflections. And I was thinking maybe you can let me know whether this resonates or not. But I was thinking maybe there is sort of overworked. So I've got a bit too much on. And that can lead to overwhelm. This is feeling like there is too much, and then because I think you can have too much. I think you can be overworked without being overwhelmed. You might maybe I was thinking what's the outcome of being overworked? You're probably gonna feel a bit tired, right? You're probably gonna feel a little bit tired if you've got too much to do. But overworked doesn't mean you're overwhelmed. But I think maybe if that goes on for too long, you can feel overwhelmed. It can kind of create an emotional state. So I was thinking if I feel overwhelmed by work, I do feel I sort of lose my objectivity. I think I feel a bit like emotional. I sort of lose like rational, like this is what I can do to control it. When I'm feeling overwhelmed, it just for me it feels just a bit emotional. Like, oh, I can't do it all. And then I think maybe if you do that for too long, you can start to feel out of control. And I think when you're feeling sort of out of control, I think that's where it starts to become a bit stressful. When I say a bit stressful, potentially quite a lot stressful. But I was just reflecting on it and thinking, we're talking about overwhelm, but I think perhaps this is on a little bit of a scale. So I have two questions for you. First of all, does that kind of resonate with you as a scale? Can you see like you might start at being overworked and actually sometimes you can just accept that I've got too much on, or the too much on can kind of feel very, very, very difficult. That's where you get to overwhelm. And then actually, if you feel overwhelmed for too long, you can feel out of control. It was just as I was reflecting. So question number one, does that resonate with you? Question number two, once you've done that, is where are you right now? And I would like you to put your star on the screen for this one. So this is anonymous, but where do you think you are right now? By the way, if you're like totally fine, don't put a star on the screen. But there are 124 of us here. And I thought, oh, let's either put it on overworked, overwhelmed, or out of control. Stars on screen. Oh, don't do that, Helen. That pink line is me. Stars on screen. Instructions for that. I got these wrong last week. I think, is there a pencil on the bottom left of your Zoom screen that you click on now? Last week definitely felt out of control. We'll explain how to do stars because Zoom's changed it, and I don't think I've got my instructions right. So, star. I think it's like it's normally view options, annotate and star, but I think they've moved it around now, and there's a pen on the bottom left of the corner that you press, something like that. Let me look at your chops. I would swap overwhelm with out of control, and then I think I get overworked. I mean, maybe it's not a useful distinction. I think control is the important element. Yeah, there is. I do remember Sarah's podcast episode that she did with Bill Mitchell on resilience, and he did say that the difference is your feelings of control. Whether something can feel manageable in terms of the emotion. My scale would be overworked, then out of control. Maybe it doesn't work as a distinction. I was just thinking about mine because sometimes I feel like I'm a bit overworked, but I'm okay. Like I'm okay. I think the moment I get into overwhelm is when I'm sort of not okay. Like if I'm overwhelmed, I'm just kind of it's not the best version of me, not the fizzy version of me. It's the sort of slightly negative version of me. People say it resonates, works for me. Okay, let's see where we've got as a group. I mean, I think most of us are, well, yeah, I mean, it's very pretty, all these stars. It looks like looking at the night sky. I'm trying to work out what it's actually telling us. Not too many people may be on the out of control, which is good. I'm glad because I don't think that feels very nice. Quite a lot of us on the overwhelm, kind of where we're sitting at the moment. Any other reflections before we get into ideas for action? I'm going to just clear your stars for a moment so I can see your comments. Clear those for a moment. Kelly, sometimes when I'm out of my depth, I find it feels overwhelmed. I guess what I'm reading into is it maybe isn't a useful distinction because when you're feeling like this, it all merges together. I'm overworked, overwhelmed, and I feel out of control. So actually, maybe the distinction I've made isn't useful for you. I guess the gist of it is that this doesn't feel good. If your work is leading you to feel tired, emotional, or stressed, like it's not good. We don't want to be in this state for that long. I think it probably is also worth recognizing that this, you probably will feel like this at some points. I'm not saying you should feel like this at some points. And like I don't think we should just go and that's just how work is. So we should just accept it. But I do think actually lots of us do feel like this. There are points in time for all of us. Even if you love your job and you love where you work and all that stuff, like we are probably going to find ourselves in these situations. It's pretty normal to have more than we can do, to feel like, oh, we don't know how to do it, and to maybe get a little stressed by it. But I think what we probably need to get better at is recognizing when we are in these moments and trying to respond to it in ways that are in our control. I don't think we're always, we're not always in control of the work that comes your way. But I think what we need to do is make sure that we don't sit in these emotional feelings for too long, because I think anything that's going to lead towards stress is not going to help you in work. Yeah, reminding yourself, Lucy says, reminding you we won't always feel this way is useful. Yeah, it often, I mean, I think it often comes in peaks, this kind of feeling of work. But I think knowing that this is a peak and I can do something about it, I don't just have to like work, I don't just have to sit in it until it goes away. I think that's what I would like to help you with today. Okay, so three things. Now, I'm not going to introduce new things. I'm just going to talk through the three things on the podcast. But what I thought we would do together, this is why I think it might be helpful, is I thought we would work through together the three things we talked about on the podcast. And my aim is that you come away with a bit of insight and a bit of positivity that you can take into the rest of your Thursday. That is my aim. So first thing that we talked about on the podcast was the difference between activities. So this is sort of the list of things you have to do, and outcomes. So this is sort of the why we do these things, the bigger benefit of doing these things. As a little bit of an experiment, I thought that I would set a timer. So you'll need a bit of paper, pen and paper, or just a phone, like you can wherever you like want to make your notes. But I thought we do 1 minute writing down just a bit of a dump of all of your activities, or like just dump them down, like all the like tasks and to-do lists and activities that are currently just sat in your head. I'm going to give you 1 minute and I just want you to get them all down on paper. I'm going to do it at the same time as you. I have my paper at the ready. And then I am going to stop the clock. And then I thought we would do 1 minute to think about the outcomes. Before I set the timer, any questions about the difference between those things? I don't want you to be like, oh, what's an outcome? What's an activity? Any questions between? So think about activities, tasks, to-do list, the 101 things. Outcomes are sort of the bigger benefit of what you're doing. Like, what are the biggest outcomes that you're working on at the moment, as of this week? That's the distinction. Okay, so I'm going to set the timer now. Hang on, everybody, while I get this ready. The timer is starting now. You've got 1 minute. I'll just go quiet while doing it. Write down all of your activities. Just get them out your head, dump them on a piece of paper. Timer is going now. I'll do it with you. All right, stop. Stop. Like, don't be too scared by your list. Just bear with. Don't be too scared by your list. Okay, I'm going to set the timer again for a minute. Now you're just going to write down what are the outcomes that you are working towards. So, kind of, what's all this going towards? Like, what are your biggest outcomes at the moment that you are working towards? So I'm going to set the timer now. Okay, stop the timer, Helen. Stop. Okay. So first of all, just a high level reflection. So here is my list. My list, you can see. When you look at your lists, just what do you notice? What do you notice? Like, what do you notice, and how do you make it feel? How does it make you feel? Those are my two first questions for you. Head into chat. I don't want to ask you too many loaded questions, but when you look at your list, what do you notice? So much to do, so much to do. Helen, I don't feel better. That's interesting, Kimberly. My outcomes aren't all aligning. Sorry, the activities. That's interesting. So working on loads of stuff that maybe doesn't connect to the outcomes that are important to us. Interesting. Lots of activities, but not that many outcomes. Yeah, I had that. I had 4 outcomes. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I had 10 activities, and they were just in a minute. And I actually had 4. I had 4 outcomes. Interesting. I had the same thing. Activities list is longer. I feel much better. I actually feel better. I'm like, when I look at the list, the activities list, I'm like, I honestly go, oh, shit. When is that gonna? I look at my activities list, I'm slightly panicking about the amount of things there. But then when I look at the outcomes one, I'm like, but that's why. I like the idea of sort of mapping the activities to the outcomes. I feel much better when I look at the outcomes list than I do the activities one. Excited, that's a nice feeling, Rebecca. Excited, new stuff here. Activities don't have an end. Yeah. What else? The structure, I would swap. Okay, we've done that one. The list related was calming to zoom out. I found it calming loose to zoom out. Activities easy, outcomes harder. Yeah. My outcomes, I've got outcomes of like one of my outcomes was publishing our most, so on my activities list I had like book edits and stuff. That's what Sarah's doing now. And then when I went to outcomes, I had publishing our most useful, exciting and recommended book yet. That is way more motivating than book edits. I'm like that outcome, I'm much more connected to the outcome. What else have we got? Relatively simple to think about outcomes and useful to note for future performance reviews. That's a very good point, Gabby. If you are having a conversation with your manager, what is going to be more impactful in that conversation? To go, I'm really busy, I've got this long list of stuff, book edits, blah, 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 all the things that are on my list, or the outcomes that I'm working towards at the moment are, and then maybe this is where I might need some support. Like start outcomes and then maybe go into activities, particularly if you need help prioritizing or stopping or slowing things down. That's a very good point, Gabby. Any other reflections? It looks more doable than when it's in my head. I think that's often true. This is often the difference, Shalini, between, facts and feelings. When you keep it all in your head, it starts to feel like it's not possible, too much stuff. When you write it down on paper, sometimes it feels a bit more manageable. I mean, to be honest, I do look at my activities list and think, oh, so cool. But I'm much more motivated to like get on with it when I look at the outcomes one. Nice. That's interesting, Helen. It's a bit of a wish list at the moment. Like, like actually going, well, what am I actually going to do? Like, these are all the things that I should be doing. But actually, what am I actually going to do? Maybe having a more achievable list of activities than just a dump of everything that you could, should, and might want to do. Any other? Feels good to write it down. Nice to write things down. Yeah, I often find it's nice to write things down. It's a podcast that someone forwarded to me this week about letter writing that's on my list to listen to. I do like writing a letter. What else? Okay. All right. Some reflections. So I guess first thing for you to do, generally, like after today, is I think in moments of overwhelm or when you're overworked or when it feels out of control, whichever way you are, those 3 things we talked about, I do think it is helpful to take a moment, not a long time, and just go, what are all the activities and what are the outcomes? Seeing if you can zoom out a bit or connect to the motivation, like the why behind your work, or work out if that activity doesn't connect to any of my important outcomes, then is it that important? Like, am I doing it? I think any of those reflections might be useful for you. Next thing I want to talk about is talking it out. So one of the things that we mentioned on the podcast is keeping these feelings to yourself makes them harder to like handle. Talking it through a bit like we are now, like just this kind of chat about it, normalizing a little bit, I think is very useful. We talked about 3 people, or I guess 3 abilities that can help when you are talking it out. That's going to really annoy me. So let me move that circle. So the first person that you might want to have a conversation with, I'm just going to move that there, is somebody who has got somebody who might be like a little like a clarity creator. There'll be people that you work with or that that when your brain is really messy, not like messy brain, there'll be some people that you can talk to that are really good at helping you to create clarity. They just make it simple for you. And so I would have a think about who is that person, who is that like practical problem solving kind of person who helps you create clarity. That is a useful person when your brain is feeling a bit messy. So I try and write that person down. I think like I definitely have some friends and people in my team that can do that. Probably not Sarah actually. Like, Sarah's probably not the first person I go to. If I want clarity, it's probably Sarah, my Sarah, your Sarah. It's probably not, I wouldn't go to her for that. I would go to her either for challenge. So some people are really good to go, well, hang on a minute, do you really need to do that? Or, are you doing it for some reason? Or you said that needs to be done by Friday. Have you created that deadline or is that an actual real deadline? You know, those people who just like confront it a little bit, like who are those people? Because sometimes they're not comfortable conversations, but they are useful. They are useful conversations. And then also there are the people that kind of, I think, take more of like the coaching approach. So they kind of, that's not how you spell coach, looks like something else. Those people are, the people that sort of just question you, help you think a bit more deeply, like, why is this happening for you at the moment? What else is going on in your life? Those people. Talking to people when you are feeling overwhelmed is a really important thing for you to do. Keeping it to yourself is going to make these feelings harder and probably last for longer. So the action for here, I would say after today, is have a conversation with at least one of these people. Like find one of these and then just say, I'd really value a conversation with you. Got a lot on at work at the moment, feeling a bit difficult. I feel like conversations with you are going to help me create clarity or help me challenge my thinking or just help me kind of unlock as I'm working it through, like any of those things. But set up a conversation. That is your action after today with one of these people that can bring you. And if you want to chat, Sean's the challenge person. He's volunteered himself as a challenge person. Right, the last thing that I want to do, I want to end on positivity. So the last thing I want to do is I'm going to ask you 3 questions. We've got 3 minutes, 3 questions. Can you please pop your answers into chat? Let's do like speed, squiggly contribution to help you feel a bit positive at the end of this day. Question number 1, what have you made progress on this week? What is something that you have made progress on this week? So what have I made progress on this week? I have made progress on our podcast developments, made progress on some client work. Kathy had an interview. Yanka's done some networking. What else, everybody? What have you made progress? Apply for 2 jobs. At least that's massive progress. Big numbers project, job interviews, loads of interviews. Planning for an offsite, new next stage for a new role, budget for the year ahead, networking, and loads of interviews in here. Figured out how to rebalance my equation for success. That's exciting, Lloyd. Sign off boss on mat leave, cover plan, and remuneration plans. Well done, Caroline. Project draft submitted. This is good progress. This is good progress in relationships. Recently made redundant and been listening to this podcast. Thank you. Stood up for myself. I like this. Okay, question number 2. Who have you helped this week? Who have you helped this week? Who is one person in work or out of work that you have helped this week? I think I might have helped those graduates. I think I helped people yesterday. Langer Rock. I think I did. And actually, somebody came up to me last night at that event and they said, "Oh, they've been made redundant recently and they've been listening to the podcast." So I'm banking those. Helped a colleague, a person whose father's sick. Helped the school PTA, colleagues with queries, line manager with support of a member of staff, Rebecca. Also, I feel like I skipped over the person whose father's very sick. I'm sorry to hear that. That's a very kind thing for you to do. I would say your name, but it's come up as a bit of a code, but that's a nice thing. Fix some IT issues with the team, peers, friends, fellow colleagues. Oh, who cleared out their wardrobe? Success. What else have we got in here? Helped a colleague recognise his perfectionism. Well done. Got additional money approved for a colleague. Fantastic. Okay, 1 minute left. 1 minute left. Last one. What do you feel good about outside of work? Okay, we've got about 30 seconds before you might need to go to your next meeting. Let's just do this one. What do you feel good about outside of work? What is something that is happening I'm running, friends, running pain-free. That's exciting, Karen. Recovering from a sport injury. Lots of like sporty related stuff. Wild swimming, friends. Having planned the meals for the week. Selena, I admire that level of organisation. I just pick out Ramona's falafel from my freezer and mainly eat that. Crossover in ice skating. Ramona's falafel. I mean, I'm all about it. Half marathon. Well done, Lloyd. Decluttering, new hobbies, being with family. Amazing. Okay, so these questions, everybody. When you are in a moment of overwhelm and it feels difficult and you might be doubting yourself, just ask yourself these questions. We have done it in 3 minutes, and it is a nice thing to do, and it is a nice thing to hear what other people are doing too. And whether you feel better about yourself or you feel better because other people are doing good things, like connecting with feelings that make us feel good is really important in moments that feel hard at work.